Hey guys, welcome back again. You guessed it. Here's another update from Lauren, and No Place Like Tomorrow is at 90,036 words. I'm gonna pause a minute and let you guys take that in, and let me take that in. 90036. That means I've only got 10,000 more words before I hit the 100,000 mark. I don't know how to feel about that. If I'm being totally honest, I don't know how to feel about that. Somebody asked me, how many words do you think you'll have in this book? And the answer is I don't know. I don't know. I do know where I'm at approximately in the timeline, in the plot chart. I know that I have like 2 more events before the climax, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of downward events in the following action, and I do know that book 1 ends on a cliffhanger. How do I know that? Because I already wrote the ending. I already have the scene for the ending. So there's not a lot left. If you're counting with me, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 events left that need to happen before the end of this book. For me, an event is usually like a chapter or 2. The event I'm doing right now, though, is going to be about 3 chapters. So, how many words? Let's say I will break 100. I will break 100. It will happen. I can pretty much guarantee it. Will I reach 120? I don't know. I've read online that 120 is the upward limit for a novel. We'll see if I stick to that. I also read online that one of the Game of Thrones books was like 417,000 words. I'm not going to do that. I haven't read Game of Thrones, but I'm not going to do that. So, that's where we're at right now. Now, as I've been doing, I'm going to do a dramatic reading to celebrate that we're at 90,000 words. And the type of dramatic reading I want to do is from the most recent part of the book that I'm reading. It's chapter 34. Now, throughout most of my book, Eaton has kind of been this cinnamon roll of a main character. He's kind of this unassuming, harmless, well, maybe not harmless, but just kind of meek, mild. He's still figuring out who he is, and how he fits into the magical world and what that looks like for him. And he's come under Valen's protection and guidance and kind of, you are my human and I'm going to bring you along and teach you how to be in the magical world. And Eaton's been through a whole heck of a lot and dealt with a whole heck of a lot and had to fight through this idea of who he is in relation to the state of the world, in relation to magic being outlawed, in relation to losing his connection to his home. There's all sorts of things that have happened to him in this span of time. And finally, in chapter 34, Eaton comes into his own a little bit. He's finally kind of got firm ground underneath him. He is finally at a point where he's like, I know mostly at least who I am or who I'm meant to be or who people expect me to be in the grand scheme of things. And he comes up against, for the second time, a white dragon named Alperon. And Alperon has won the title of True King away from Valens. And Valens was okay with this. But in the interim, Zephyr and Cyprin and Jevin have bound themselves to Valens, which means that they're not bound to Alperon, which is a whole shenanigans. So Valens and Eaton and Cyprin and Jevin and Zephyr are all magically bound to each other at this point, which is obviously really irritating for Alperon, who now has no control over any of those 4 dragons. So it's bound to cause a fight. At this point, Eaton and co. have gone to yet another gathering of magical beings. The first one they go to is just dragons. This one is all magical beings kind of gathered in one place. And Alperon knows they are there and is not pleased. And this is the scene. Eaton frowns, setting his pack next to Valence's. What'll happen when Alperon finds out about what you guys did? There will be a fallout, Valence answers. Alperon will not be pleased, and may even see it as a direct threat to him. If we lay low, perhaps he will ignore it. That's not likely, Jevin frowns. I am hopeful. No. Jevin shakes his head, pointing at a figure walking towards them. It's not likely at all. Shit, Cyprin mutters. Here comes his royal assness now. Cyprin, Valence hisses. Alperon in his human form is no less intimidating than in his true form. He is wearing plain jeans and a white shirt that shows off the glowing blue mark on his shoulder. His white hair seems to glow in the bright afternoon sunlight, and his icy blue eyes are fierce as he approaches. Stay behind me, Valence says lowly to Eaton, stepping in front of the mage. I won't let him hurt you. Valence sighs. Mentally, he says, Do not interfere, Pavlus. He will hurt you if he thinks you are a threat or a way to control me. He already signaled his willingness to do so when he sent his mate after you at the Lake of the Lost. Well, well, well. Look who finally decided to show up. Alperon smirks, stopping just inside the shade of the large oak. Cyprin, Jevin, and Zephyr all step in front of Valence, with the younger black dragon in the middle with his magic flared around his arms. Back off, Alperon. That elicits a small chuckle from the white dragon. Is that any way to speak to your king, Cyprin? You're not my king. Ah, but my mark says otherwise. As if on cue, the blue mark burns a little brighter. Took you guys long enough to get here. I put out summons almost 2 weeks ago. Hunter activity has picked up. And here I thought Valence was just hiding in shame. Alperon smirks, and it's dangerous. His magic flares around his arms, and he directs his next comment to the older black dragon. Got anything to say to that? Valence sighs. You won the vote, Alperon. I never challenged that. I simply refuse to bind myself to you, as I do not think it is necessary. Not necessary, Alperon scoffs, motioning to the 3 dragons barring the way between him and Valence. What do you call this little act of rebellion? You think I didn't feel it when their magic slipped from my command? I had hoped it was a mistake, but now I see that you actually are willing to usurp me. I am not challenging you, Valence repeats. They chose to bind themselves to me after the stunt you pulled. Frankly, I am surprised others have not echoed their dissent. You made a fool of yourself, Alperon, but I still will not challenge. That should tell you all you need to know about where my loyalties lie. Your loyalties are with the human hiding like a child behind your skirt, Alperon spits. Cyprin growls, and it's only Jevin's hand on his arm that stops him from attacking the white dragon. Next to him, Zephyr growls as well. I'm not scared of you, Alperon. Eaton steps out from behind Valence, flaring his magic defiantly the way he'd seen the black dragon do so many times. His blue and green were less impressive than Valence's gold, but it made his point. None of us are. You're just a bully trying to throw your weight around to get obedience. You may have won the vote for true king, but that's only because Valence didn't want the role. If he'd wanted it, you wouldn't have stood a chance. That dangerous smirk returns to Alperon's features. Well, the human has a spine. Who would have thought? Eaton? Valence's voice is sharp in his mind, but also thick with worry. Do not test him. He is dangerous. Mentally, Eaton responds, So am I. Valence blinks at the response, and it takes him a moment to register that small storm clouds have formed around Eaton's feet. Lightning flashes through them and travels up around Eaton's arms where his magic is getting brighter. Gold plays on the edges of the blue, and on the edges of the green, white magic. A color Valence has never seen anyone be able to wield. Alperon seems to notice this too. If the way the color drains from his face is any indication, he takes a step back. What are you? I'm Valens' storm mage. Cyprin, Jevin, and Zephyr all turn, and their reactions are much the same as Alperon's. They glance at Eaton, then at Valens, then step aside to clear the path between Eaton and the white dragon threatening them. I suggest you reconsider who exactly you take that tone with, Alperon, Eaton says. Like Valens, his voice stays calm but carries power like a whip crack. Flashes of lightning punctuate his words. Because if you choose to take it with me or my dragons again, I'll have to show you what I'm capable of. Alperon swallows, then turns on his heel and marches away. Once he's gone, Eaton lets his magic fall away, turning a triumphant smirk to Valens. How was that? Valens shakes his head, disbelief written on his features. When did you learn how to do that? I love when my characters get to come into their own a little bit. Eaton, through the whole book, has just been so meek and mild and even-mannered and even-tempered. And even when he gets frustrated, he doesn't know what to do with himself. And then I get moments like this, where my character, whom I've worked with for years, for thousands of words, finally figures out that he is, in fact, a bit of a badass. And now he can own it, and he can be the character that he needs to be for books 2 and 3. Because, I can't give you too much of this new Eaton. You've got to deal with the old Eaton first, the young Eaton, the inexperienced Eaton, the Eaton that doesn't know what the heck he's doing, because then when you get to book 2, and you see the opening scene of book 2, it will make you just so happy that you waited for this Eaton to pop up. It's a bit of a coming of age. It's a bit of a found family. There's definitely a touch him and die. and I love it. And I love getting to share it with you and getting to work and rework and adjust and edit and be in this story as long as I have been. And at 90,000 words, and when I'm looking at my Google Doc, I am on page 239. 239 in my Google Doc, which is really 235 because I've got 4 little divisions in there. So 235 Times New Roman, size 12 font, 1.5 spaced. I'm just excited to see how many pages it ends up being when it's printed and bound and exists in published form. If you're excited too, don't forget to keep following along with me. Keep coming along on the journey. Like I said, I'm aiming for summer of 2025 for this to make it to public hands. I am going to need beta readers, so I'll probably put out feelers for that eventually. Just be aware that it's a really long book. 90,036 words right now with 7 events left to go before we reach the end. I will bet on breaking 100,000. I could hit 120. I could go over. I don't know. 100,000 is the next milestone that I'll be posting for, unless I decide to share some other little snippets of scenes. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you keep coming back and hanging out with me. And I will see you next time where there is no place like tomorrow.